Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. I'm Randy Wright, and I'll be your captain on this solo flight special edition of our state-of-the-art radio program. Folks, this will be the final boarding call, so if you please, claim your seats, fasten your seat belts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show while I go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist, as there really is a lot of news and information to get to before I may fully indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Well, folks, we see that Paul Manafort, the head guy there at the Trumpidian Temple and Tabernacle, has resigned from his position. This is the third time in a relatively brief period of time that Trump has decided to shake up his campaign staff and personnel. And again, it just sheds some light on some of the false narrative that has been crammed down our throats by the Lion Branch Trumpidians that Donald Trump is some greatly, bigly businessman. Because if you stop and think about this in a business context, this would be like changing your board of directors 3 times in the course of a year. Now, would that be a steady or stable business, one that you would willingly invest money into? Would you expect the stock prices to stay high? Now, I already know what the rebuttal is going to be on the part of a vast majority of the Lion Branch Trumpidians, that all of a sudden it's not that way with respect to closely held private family businesses. In other words, businesses that are not traded on the public stock exchange. Be that as it may, Trump is vying for the highest office in the land, the presidency of the United States of America. And believe it or not, that is an office that has been stretched so far beyond the proper scope and application of its powers as enumerated unto it by the clear and concise language contained within the 4 corners of our shared United States Constitution, that we can't just take this lightly. We can't just ignore these just large, grandiose problems that are facing this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. Yet that's exactly where we find ourselves now. We are forced to essentially choose between 2 of the most unpopular candidates and nominees in living memory, if not within recorded history of our electoral process. Ultimately, what this says, though, is that Trump is trying to transform our electorate into a poorly scripted reality television program. In other words, he thinks that he is reliving his role as host of The Apprentice so that he can run around and tell people in a most humiliating and public fashion that, guess what, you're fired. Except here's the problem. The roles are reversed. In this case, Trump is the one who is filling out a job application for the highest office in these United States of America. He is seeking to be an employee of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people. Now, this is something he's never done before. He's never been in the role of servant, and yet now he wants to be the most powerful public servant in the entire United States of America. It just seems baffling. It seems something that he's ill-equipped for, that he's ill-prepared for, and it can only have one outcome for the United States of America, and that's a detrimental one. You see, as my first officer Jeremy Grapenton and I have oft-times reiterated on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence the Wright Flyer, we must be stalwart in defending our fundamental and inalienable rights which were endowed to us by our Creator, who is none other than the God of nature himself. It's not something that can be ignored, nor is it something that we can take lightly. But that's exactly how the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media are taking it. They're not paying attention to the true hopes, dreams, aspirations, and consent and will of the American people. And that, too, in and of itself, plays into this bad comedy of errors that is unfurling before our very eyes as we grow ever closer to that general election cycle that is slated later this November. Why do we have to accept these untenable situations, these untenable, unacceptable, and unpopular candidates? The truth of the matter is we don't have to accept them. Irrespective of what the Lion Branch Trumpidians and the detente wing of the gutless opposition party, or GOP, attempt to tell us, we do not have to accept this. This is the United States of America, after all, and therefore we must vote our conscience. Indeed, that's what Texas Senator Ted Cruz was saying when he got up in front of the cameras of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media there on the convention floor in Cleveland, Ohio, on the second day of the Republican National Convention, and expressly told the American people that they should vote their conscience. Now, Don Aldoff, Julius Caesar, Trumpolini tried to stir the fans, to stoke the flames of malcontent and discontentment by causing the audience to boo the Texas senator based solely on the grounds that Cruz refused to endorse him. Now, as we have mentioned before, this was nothing new. This was knowledge that Donald J. Trump already had if he had chosen to pay attention to what Ted Cruz had told him. And it's also important to recall that Cruz was the one that was asked to make the appearance at the Republican National Convention. That was not something that he did of his own fruition. The volatile atmosphere, the venomous atmosphere, for lack of a better term, that was unleashed upon the convention floor in Cleveland, Ohio, was all part of bad political kabuki theater. Indeed, I would say that it was political kabuki theater at its worst. But what is it? It's all part of a narrative of character assassination. That is what Paul Manafort had brought to the campaign ever since Corey Lewandowski had been thrown under the bus by his orange master, the New York billionaire, businessman, real estate tycoon, and all-around vulgarian, Donald J. Trump, who also happens to go by on any day two given alter egos of either John Barron or John Miller. You see, that's fitting. You recall the imagery or the iconography of the theater of the smiling mask and the frowning mask? That's what Trump's doing. He's playing into this. He's turning this into some sort of entertainment fiasco. It's as though we are living through some professional wrestling match. And anyone who knows anything about that knows that it's all choreographed, it's all staged, it's not real. It's all about cheap, meaningless entertainment. And of course that brings up one of the terms that should be brought back from archaic English, that of trumpery, flashy, showy, but ultimately meaningless. You see, the United States of America is not, nor should it ever be, an autocracy. But Trump fancies himself as an autocrat. That's why he has reached out to Vladimir Putin. That's why he finds Vladimir Putin and other strongmen, dictatorial, authoritarian types so fascinating. It's because that's what he would be. It's how he runs his business empire. It's how he has gone about all of his business dealings for the vast majority of his 70 years spent on God's green earth. These are just simple facts of reality that we cannot ignore, nor can we sugarcoat it or candy coat it to try and make it better than it is. It is the harsh, stark reality that we, in our capacity as the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours, must understand, acquiesce, and adapt to. That is the only way that we are ever going to be able to overcome these problems. Now, that is far easier said than done. I fully realize this, but we are the citizens of the United States of America. We have that indomitable and unconquerable spirit that has guided us over every hurdle, obstacle, and adversity that has been placed in our path throughout our relatively brief yet illustrious history. It also explains why our Constitution, that greatest social compact and contract ever devised by the hands of men yet divinely inspired by providence above, has been the longest contiguous or uninterrupted constitutionally endowed federalist representative republic in the course of human events. You see, we are truly fortunate here in the United States of America because we are blessed with the greatest birthright and inheritance of any people on earth. And that birthright and inheritance is our Constitution, which codifies the fundamental and inalienable rights that were endowed to us by our Creator, the God of nature. You can't ignore this. This is who we are. It is a quintessential aspect of who we are. But the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists who are hell-bent on utterly annihilating the United States of America both as a nation and as a people see a light at the end of the tunnel. They think that they are within grasp of their twisted, diabolical machinations, plots, and schemes, which are designed to unravel the very societal fabric of this once grand representative republic of ours. And they have done it through infiltration. They have done it through incremental steps. They have polluted and corrupted the hearts, souls, and minds of we the people, the true ultimate wielders of sovereignty of these United States of America. The more we think about it, and the closer that we get to the general election cycle slated for later this November, we have to come to the inexorable conclusion that some great catastrophe is looming. I know that you, our cherished listening passengers and audience members, feel this as much as we do. It's something that has been just a terrible pit in our stomach ever since we saw that the last true constitutional compositionist in Texas, Senator Ted Cruz, suspended his bid for the White House. Of all of the 17 candidates who were vying for the highest office in the land, we chose the biggest buffoon. Is this really bread and circuses? We have to take a moment now, folks, and ask ourselves, is this how freedom dies in the United States of America, with bread and circuses, like Rome did? You see, Rome was the pinnacle of Western civilization, and it fell. It fell due to vice, greed, corruption, the insatiable appetite and illicit concentration of power in the hands of autocratic emperors. That is not the fate of the United States. That is not who we are, either as a nation or as a people. Again, if we really wish to place the United States of America back onto the path of prosperity, we must go back to basics, as my first officer, Jeremy Grapenton, has so oft-times reiterated. Basics in this country means going back to the clear and concise language contained within the four corners of our shared United States Constitution. It really is that simple. It really is that cut and dry. But for those who currently wield the reins of political power, in other words, the political powers that be, that is unacceptable. They do not wish to be limited or constrained by the natural law tenets that form the bedrock foundation and thereby underpin not only our shared United States Constitution, but also our representative Republican form of government. They do not wish to be constrained because in their arrogance, they think they know what's best for us, which is wholly diametrically opposed to the foundational image that our founding fathers dreamed of at the inception of our nation some 235 years ago. Think about it, folks. The Declaration of Independence was signed and penned 240 years ago. Our founding fathers risked everything to bring about a revolutionary new idea to the arena of politics in a way that had never been done before. The revolutionary aspect of that long, drawn-out, bloody, and bitter struggle known as the American War of Independence was this idea that we, the people, are the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty. Never before had that been tried. But if you look at Manafort, that's not what he did. And that's maybe one of the reasons why he's been thrown under the bus, but I'm not willing to give Donald Julius Caesar Trumpolini that much benefit of the doubt. He's given me no reason to believe that that fits into his outlook. Rather, what I see is that Trump had to throw him under the bus because of the surfacing connections that he had with Russia. Already, Trump was seen as weak or soft on Russia, even having a friendly relationship with Russia's autocratic dictator Vladimir Putin. That was a position that, an image rather, that he could ill afford to have come to fruition now that the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media have started to turn their backs on him, just as we predicted they would right here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. Folks, I wish that there was some comfort that I could convey to you as I sit here and speak into this microphone, but I can honestly think of none. We are in the midst of a great identity crisis coupled with a slew of constitutional crises that shows no signs of getting better at any time in the foreseeable future. Again, everywhere we turn, the twin doctrines of political correctness and moral relativism have been foisted against us, utilized as a weapon by the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists to further push America down the path to unacceptable socialism. That's not good for this nation. That's not the way that this nation was ever meant to be. And it certainly does not dovetail with the natural law tenets that form the bedrock foundation of this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. But the reason why Manafort is out is because of the Russian connections, the illicit campaign financing that he got in Ukraine from Yushchenko, who was the pro-Russian Vladimir Putin puppet in the region, and that just was something that was taking a battering for Trump. But the problem that we see from this just destructive, poorly scripted reality television quote-unquote entertainment that has become the new norm of the American system of polity is that our rights and our standard of living and our very sovereignty hang in the balance. Nothing is as it seems. Nothing is as the media narrative has been. Nothing is as Reince and Repeatus, the head of the Republican National Convention and Committee, would have us believe. It's all part of this web of deceit. We have understood for a long time now in these United States of America that the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty are sick and tired and fed up with the rampant and rank corruption that infests basically all levels of government in this republic. They are wanting to see the United States of America return to the path of prosperity. But they have seen the gutless opposition party, or GOP, make grandiose and verbose promises of which they didn't keep any of. Think back to the midterm elections of 2014, and you will see the type of bitter anger of which I speak, and therefore they have become distraught. That's why we have warned and reiterated on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, that we should be exceedingly cautious about allowing ourselves to be whipped up into an emotional frenzy, because a state of raw emotionalism leaves us highly susceptible to the twisted machinations of frauds, carnival barkers, con men, and snake oil salesmen. After all, is that not what Donald J. Trump represents? Is that not what his scorched earth tactics and policies all throughout the primary process represents and has unleashed upon our society and culture and system of polity? Folks, I believe that the answer to this question, which is rhetorical in nature anyway, should be both open and obvious. Donald J. Trump represents a new strain of populism, and he is but a true symptom of the greater problem. And it's not that the Republican Party itself was always some evil thing, or that they were always based in identity politics and keeping people down and essentially trying to keep an oligarchy. That, again, is the propaganda that has been foisted upon us by the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media. Rather, what has happened is they have grown complacent. They have seen that their efforts to try and overcome the cabal of corruption that just resides deep in the heart of Capitol Hill and oozes from every orifice of Washington, D.C., is so impossible to overcome that they'd rather just make their own money. Instead of putting forth the effort and doing the job that their constituents sent them there to accomplish, they believe that they see a bigger picture, and they essentially just say, screw it, we're just going to line our own pockets because this system is beyond repair anyway. Again, nothing could be further from the truth. That's just what they've managed to convince themselves of, but it's not the truth. It will never be the truth as long as there is a single American citizen who is fighting for the restoration of strict adherence to the fundamental tenets contained within our shared United States Constitution. That is our duty, obligation, and above all, responsibility. It's what our founding fathers would expect us to do. But again, because of the historical revisionists who infiltrated our institutions of education from coast to coast and border to border, the up-and-coming generation, and if we're not careful, that generation which has yet to be born yet, has been indoctrinated. Indoctrinated not to know who they are, not to know what their glorious birthright is. They have been led astray. Of course, this is what the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists have been hoping to accomplish for well over a century and a half now, folks. They have been meticulous, very patient, stalwart even, in their efforts to fundamentally and irreparably redefine these United States of America away from being a federalist, constitutionally endowed representative republic into some Orwellian nightmare. It really does have tinges of George Orwell's 1984. They want to be big government. We already know that back in 2013, former NSA contractor Edward Snowden exposed the PRISM program and various other spy programs in which they were illicitly gathering, in direct violation of the Fourth Amendment, just treasure troves of information from American citizens. Now, they're claiming that they're not using it to the great detriment of the American citizen, but I don't believe that. This government has not given us any reason to trust what they are saying. This government has not given us any reason to believe that they are honest when they come forth and say that what they're really doing is trying to protect us. And even if that is the case, recall the old adage that the road to hell is paved in good intentions. Well, we are almost at political hell in the United States today, folks. The 2016 presidential election cycle exposes the great and bitter divides that exist within the heart of this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. Again, the only way that we can ever hope to place this nation back onto the path of prosperity is to embrace the fundamental tenets that made us who we are, that propelled us to such lofty heights in our relatively brief yet illustrious history. Now, I know that that is, again, far easier said than done. But you know what? We here in the United States of America have never surrendered to any hurdle, obstacle, or adversity that has ever been placed in our path. We have never surrendered to those forces that told us no, we couldn't accomplish the lofty goals that we have set unto ourselves. Well, it is time that we reject that. It is time that we once again prove that we are still the nation we have been for the past 235 years, that we will never bow down to the agent provocateurs of tyranny, oppression, and despotism, that we are the freedom and liberty-loving nation that we have always been. That is what we must do. That is the message of empowerment that we should embrace. Then and only then can we begin to overcome these diabolical efforts and twisted machinations of the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftist. But we also have to overcome this strain of populism that is infecting and afflicting the hearts, souls, and minds of we the people. With the selection of Stephen K. Bannon of Breitbart News to replace Paul Manafort, who was himself a corrupt populist type, we see that the Trumpaganda message is back in full swing. This is what they are trying to foist upon us. This is the untenable situation that Trump wishes to unleash upon this once thriving and flourishing republic of ours. We must reject it. We must say enough is enough. We are not going to allow a man who has never once, in the vast majority of his 70 years spent on earth, ever adhered to, expressed, or acquiesced to a conservative mindset, a man who has enabled the worst of the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftist politicians over the past 3 decades at least to to work their twisted machinations against the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people. Again, this is our duty, obligation, and above all, responsibility. Our founding fathers expected us to be a virtuous republic, and to be a virtuous republic, we have to know exactly what the moral basis of our country is, what the natural law tenets that form the bedrock foundation of our nation is, and we must stick to that. It's because those very natural law tenets are by their very nature timeless, meaning they're just as applicable today as they were at the inception of this nation, as God willing they will be centuries from now. But the only way for that to come to fruition, the only way for our indelible freedoms and liberties to be handed down to posterity and to be vibrant, is to proactively maintain and safeguard by us. We are the ones that must do this. No one else is endowed with the authority or the power to do so. No one else carries the onus of responsibility to do this. This is squarely our duty, obligation, and above all, responsibility. Now, I know it seems that I say that far too often as I sit here and speak into this microphone conveying these messages to you, but it's because it is of the utmost importance. It is true, it is on point, and it does bear repeating, because there are so many voices of distraction, so many voices of division, so many voices of hatred couching themselves as quote-unquote social justice warriors that are out there to distract us, that are there to deny us the rights that belong to us, the Constitution that belongs to us, and ultimately the representative Republican form of government that belongs to us. That's the thing, folks. The Constitution belongs to us in our capacity as popular sovereigns. It belongs to we the people, not the various candidates, not the politicians, not the nameless, faceless, and ultimately unaccountable federal bureaucrats, or even state government personnel, or even the local, municipal, and county government personnel either. No, sovereignty rests squarely in the hands of we the people, and by basically delegating certain powers and authorities unto the federal government and to the various levels of government, that is where they get their power. But whenever you have delegated power and authority, and it is abused by those whom said power and authority has been delegated to, it is the right and even the obligation, the duty, as Thomas Jefferson put it, of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty to take that power back as a form of redress of grievance. Now, let me make it perfectly clear that we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, are not proactively going out and advocating for armed insurrection, rebellion, or revolution. But we should not ignore that that is a potential option on the bargaining table. And furthermore, the mafioso quavioso, if he's even half of the great negotiator that he claims to be, the bigly businessman that he claims to be, should recognize this as well. He should recognize that the American people will not tolerate his attempts to flash his hair in front of the cameras of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media and become a Trump-tator. That's not what we are. It's not who we are. It's not what we embrace in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. Again, we see through the charade and the chicanery that has become the quintessential hallmark of this 2016 presidential election cycle. We realize exactly what it is that these nefarious forces are attempting to foist upon us, and we will not tolerate it. We will not sit down and lie back idly as they attempt to drastically, fundamentally, and irreparably transform us away from the natural law tenets that have underpinned our shared representative republic and constitution for as long as it has. Again, that is our position. And we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, come forth and produce these shows for you, our cherished listening passengers and audience members, to allow you to gain the tools to foster that fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our Constitution, and thereby your fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. No one else has the power or authority to act on your behalf. And again, this is why we say we should not be looking for some messianic figure to descend from providence and convince us that they can save us, because truth be told, they cannot. By the very design of this grand republic of ours, it is our duty, our obligation, and our responsibility. Look at what the First Amendment says, that we can congregate in order to petition the government for a redress of grievances. That's what we need to be doing, folks. That is the steps that are necessary. That is how we begin to bring this nation back from the brink of ruination and to restore it to the path of prosperity. And of course, this is the very message that the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media and the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists don't want you to know, don't want you to realize, because then you can directly challenge them. You can tell them to shove it where the sun don't shine, in crude fashion, but that's what they deserve. And that is the great realization that each and every one of us must take sooner rather than later. One of the things that we have mentioned for nearly a year now, folks, is that Donald J. Trump, with respect to his supposedly tough stance on immigration, would be anything but. That he would change his position on it. And of course he would. And the reason for that is that he doesn't really believe in it. He's never once believed in it. And that just plays directly into this false and erroneous narrative that the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media and the Trump camp and Quaff News Network have been trying to convey upon us. And just recently, Trump has come out and essentially stated that he would not build a wall, that he virtually meant that it was a virtual wall. Now, that's not what he told his throngs of Lion Branch Trumpidians. That is not how he bamboozled disillusioned conservatives all throughout the primary process. He said, we're going to build a wall, it's going to be bigly, it's good, I have perfect care forever. But it's all nonsense, just as we said it was. And it's just coming to the epicenter once again. But it's important to recall that he said back in 2012 that Mitt Romney's little plot there for self-deportation was just too harsh. It was too mean-spirited, and that it couldn't be done. And, of course, that ties into his bigly business brain in that he said that we shouldn't have borders. But it just is amazing, because the illegal alien problem is what he's capitalized on. Just is diametrically opposed to what he said back in 2012. And what's so interesting is that it was even noted at Breitbart back then that he said this. And I do have the soundbite for it, and I'm going to cue that up now so that we remember what he said back at the time. Or rather, what he has here is what he said during the campaign and primary process, that of, well, my plan is not mean-spirited. And here we go.
Let's talk more about the immigration issue and the Republican presidential race with businessman and GOP presidential candidate Donald Trump, who's also the author of the new book, Crippled America, How to Make America Great Again, coming to us from Trump Town.
Isn't that amazing? It was a book already.
Oh, Brett, you know, this whole issue of deportation and has really become a central focus over the last few days. You had Hillary Clinton jump on this right away, tweet out. She said, the idea of tracking down and deporting 11 million people is absurd, inhumane, and un-American. No Trump. You told Bill O'Reilly last night the deportation program you favor would be, quote, very humane. So what specifically do you have in mind there?
Well, first of all, it's not only deportation. It's building a wall, and I mean a real wall,
Mexico will pay for the wall. Most politicians wouldn't understand how you'd go about doing that. It'll happen. It's
yeah, most politicians and most people who understand the way that society works realizes that wouldn't happen. But back in 2012, he said that self-deportation was inhumane. He said that that was not the way to go about it. And remember, this was also after he had said back in 2008 that he thought Hillary would make a great president. So we see that, again, these are plot twists transforming this electorate of ours, or this electoral process, rather, of ours, into just poorly scripted reality television. Well, that's not who we are, either as a nation or as a people. It's not how we go about solving problems that face this country, and it's certainly not rooted in the Constitution. Yes, securing our borders is important. It's very important, but it's Congress that does it, not the president. That's part of the problem that we've had with the Barack Hussein Obama regime. The executive amnesty thing is clearly extra-constitutional. It goes beyond the proper scope and purview of the powers that have been enumerated unto the federal government, and particularly, specifically, to Congress as per Article 1, Section 8. You see, that's how it works. That's why we have a separation of powers. That's why there are three separate, distinct branches of the federal government, which are not supposed to be entangled. But throughout the disastrous 2 terms of the Barack Hussein Obama regime, we've been muddying the waters with that. We've been erasing those lines of demarcation that divide and distinguish the 3 branches of government. And Trump has once again shown that he has no interest in our shared United States Constitution, that he has only cared about saying whatever it takes to win. Or not even win, but to divide the base of the gutless opposition party, or GOP. That has been his goal. That has been what he's been working towards for so long now. And it shows that he has been almost holistically successful with that. And that's thanks due in no small part to the involvement and the methodology of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media. Again, they are the ones that essentially chose the nominee for the gutless opposition party, or GOP. And I thought that that was one of the primary contention points with the Lion Branch Trump videos. I thought that that was one of the major reasons why they came out and they said that they were so drastically loyal to the mafioso quafioso, because he calls it as it is. He's a straight shooter, and he doesn't buy into the fluff of political correctness. Except he did with the North Carolina so-called gender-neutral bathroom issue. And if you recall, so-called bruised gender, I mean Caitlyn Genderless, had made a media spectacle by visiting a public restroom, female public restroom, at Trump Tower. So can we ignore this? Can we ignore that this is what the mafioso quafioso has done, that he has essentially been two-faced throughout this entire electoral season? I don't think you can. It's impossible to ignore that. And it's because it's partially exactly what he has been doing. It has been this goal to fundamentally redefine and reshape these United States of America to fit the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist agenda that he has embraced for the vast majority of his 70 years spent here on God's green earth. Folks, the fact that he now says that he's going to build a virtual wall, and the fact that he says he's not going to actually build a wall, that plays into everything that he said thus far. Recall that he went on to the Quaff and Friends morning program there at the Quaff News Network and claimed that he was, just making mere suggestions throughout this campaign cycle, that anything that he said doesn't really hold or carry weight because he's not president yet. That's just part of the message that he has been cramming down our throats, and it's intellectually disingenuous. Everything he has done thus far has been intellectually disingenuous, and that is what we have been trying to warn you about here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. And truth be told, those warnings have gone unheeded by the Lion Branch Trumpidians who suffer from acute ostrich syndrome. So instead of cramming or shoving their heads into the sand, they're shoving them up their posteriors. But here we know for a fact that he said, he came out in a Saturday meeting with this newly announced Hispanic Advisory Council, suggesting that he is interested in figuring out a quote-unquote humane and efficient manner to deal with illegal aliens in the country. And this was according to three sources that Politistic managed to interview. And Trump, however, had stressed that any new announcements will still be in line with the border security-focused approach that has invited intense opposition both from Latinos and immigrants since he officially threw his quaff in the ring in July of 2015. He went on to say that people who are here is the toughest part of the immigration debate, that it must be something that respects border security but deals with this in a humane and efficient manner. And that was according to Jacob Monty, who is a Houston-based immigration attorney who sat in Trump Tower with other Latino supporters and Trump. And Politistic is getting this via BuzzFeed. And they went on to say that the idea is we're not getting someone in front of the line, we're doing it in a legal way, but he wants to hear ideas of how we deal with 11 million people that are here with no documents, said Jose Fuentes, who happened to be the chair of Mitt Romney's Hispanic Advisory Committee in 2012 and attended the meeting. So here we are, folks. Here we are. We see that he's once again trying to walk the line back from what he had previously said, the positions that he had previously staked out, and is trying to do what Trump does best, being consistently inconsistent whenever it comes to any, central, pivotal policy positions. And one of the major complaints that has been utilized against the mafioso throughout this 2016 presidential election cycle is the fact that he doesn't ever expound upon his policies. It's just sound bites, bullet points that somehow comes across as a sales pitch. But that doesn't work in the arena of American politics. It doesn't work because we're talking about our rights, we're talking about our laws, we're talking about the greater nation as a whole. But we see that a professional wrestling mentality has begun to grip the American electoral process. It's become a mere shadow of its former self, and all of the principles and all of the values, traditions, and institutions that used to be quintessential pillars of the American system of polity have begun to crumble and are being cast by the wayside. Now, if you recall, the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media said that this is the election cycle in which we are to cast away and do away with conventional wisdom. But I don't agree with that. I don't believe that. Conventional wisdom should be that which is found in the clear and concise language contained within the four corners of our shared United States Constitution, and any laws and statutes, treaties, or what have you that have been passed in furtherance thereof, or in pursuance thereof. Now, our immigration law has already been well established. The way that you deal with the 11 million that are already here, and I think that that is probably a conservative estimate, is to enforce the laws that are on the book. We've already seen that the Barack Hussein Obama regime has chosen to disregard the federal law. They've chosen not to do the one thing that they are basically enumerated from the language of the Constitution to do, and that is to faithfully execute the laws of the land. Well, the Constitution and any laws that have been made in pursuance thereof are the supreme law of the land pursuant to Article 6, Clause 2 of the Constitution itself, what is known in the common vernacular as the Supremacy Clause. It really is that cut and dry. It really is that black and white. That is the humane way to do it, because the United States of America is a nation of laws and not of men. That, too, goes back to this idea of equal protection under the law. The problem is, for the last half century at least, the United States of America has been progressively and incrementally pushed away from that notion. We have been steadily transformed into a hierarchical system that is more reflective of a caste system like that of feudalism, which also brings up the near prophetic words of Alexis de Tocqueville, that Frenchman who had a very strong, very heartfelt admiration for the United States of America in her halcyon years, who said that anyone who supports any flavor, form, or facet of socialism is, in point of fact, actually a New Age feudalist. And the reason he said that is these people want to be like kingmakers. They want to establish a caste system in which they carve out a special niche for themselves, thereby exempting themselves from the laws on the books and going against the notion of equal protection under the law. That's unacceptable. It cannot be tolerated in a free, open, and honest society like that of the United States of America. But here we are, the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media and the political powers that be, in conjunction with the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists, have pushed the United States of America into this untenable situation. They have infiltrated our traditions, our institutions, and they are working at breakneck speed towards dismantling them permanently. And the whole reason that they go about this is, as we have so oft times reiterated on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, it is because they are hell-bent on the complete and utter annihilation of these United States of America, both as a nation and as a people. They want to replace us. They want to redefine us. They want the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people, to be docile in their hands, to be malleable like clay in the hands of a potter, so that they can reshape us into their dark and twisted machinations that truly do not have a place in an open, honest, and above all free society like that of the United States of America. And Trump has once again shown that he's abiding by this notion of making a mockery of our electoral process, of making it a poorly scripted reality television program, much like the show The Apprentice that he had hosted for so long. But that just cannot be allowed to continue unabated. It cannot be allowed to go unchallenged and unfettered, because the United States of America is so much more than what Donald J. Trump has convinced himself it is. It is not his plaything. We are not some piece of real estate that he can abuse the power of eminent domain found in the Fifth Amendment to his benefit and to his enrichment. No, we are much greater than that. And it goes back to that old adage that the sum is greater than the whole of its parts. You see, those are the natural law tenets that form the bedrock foundation not only of our shared United States Constitution, but also of our federalist, constitutionally endowed, representative Republican form of government. And we cannot just turn our backs on this. We cannot just ignore that this is a major problem. So why is Trump trying to weasel his way out of the positions that he had embraced earlier? Well, it's because, again, deep down, he said that these are mere suggestions, that he's not serious about what he's saying, that he's not president yet, and that it could all change. And these suggestions mean what? They don't tie into what he campaigned on, that he said was a quintessential part of what he has said throughout it. It's just insane. It's truly insane. And again, it's why he went out on the campaign trail and in front of Quaff News and said that he doesn't make campaign promises. It truly is staggering to see that that is what he has said and that it has become a quintessential part of who he is. And it was on a phone appearance with Fox and Friends back in May that he said this. And I've got the soundbite again. And I think that I need to play that just as a reminder of what it is that he said and why he cannot be trusted. And so I'm going to go ahead and cue that up now.
And then you walked back the other day and say, listen, that was a suggestion, but you're going to put together a commission headed by Rudy Giuliani. Would you like to expand on that?
Yeah, it was a suggestion. Look, anything I say right now, I'm not the president. Everything's a suggestion. No matter what you say, it's a suggestion. I feel strongly we have to do something about, when you look at radical Islamic terrorism, we have a president that, as you folks know very well, we have a president who won't even use the term. For the World Trade Center, he won't use the term.
So there we have it. That was back on May 13th of 2016. And it just goes to show that Trump has not been serious about what he says. And so this idea of trying to be quote unquote humane about dealing with the alleged 11 million illegal aliens who have been in the United States for quite some time now just ties into that. It's all part of this shifting goal. And remember, before Manafort was ousted and before Bannon was brought in, a long while ago, before even the primary process had come to its detrimental end, Manafort had gone to the détente wing, or the leadership of the gutless opposition party, or GOP, and said that what Trump was doing on the campaign trail, in front of the cameras of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media, was nothing more than a theater performance. It was a play. It was a skit. It was designed to dupe the electorate and disillusioned conservatives. And again, that's why on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, we have proclaimed that Donald J. Trump is nothing short of the Pied Piper for disillusioned conservatives. It ties into the type of message that he has been conveying. It goes right in line with this consistent inconsistency that has become a hallmark of his candidacy ever since he first officially threw his hat or coif into the ring back in July of 2015. Why do we have to bow down and accept this? Why does this have to be a quintessential part of what our electorate has become? Because truth be told, it is an unwelcome thing. It is just diametrically opposed to the things that we hold near and dear in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. We can't bow down to that. We can't acquiesce to these unacceptable things, because the more we think about it, the more we realize that he is not some different type of politician. He's not some outsider. He has been playing the role of kingmaker now for 30 plus years. That's unacceptable. It cannot be allowed to come to fruition. It cannot be allowed to define us or become a new norm in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. Because if we allow that to come into play, then we are no longer the virtuous republic that our founding fathers demanded and expected that we be. In a sense, what we are doing is abandoning all of the traditions, institutions, principles, and core values that have defined us and propelled us to such a lofty position in the geopolitical arena for some 235 years now. We must not bow down or acquiesce to that. We cannot accept it as the truth. And it just doesn't matter. It really comes down to what we hold valuable as a people and as a nation. It is who we are to stand up for liberty. It is who we are to be the idea that freedom is a quintessential part of who we are, that it is one of those staples that defines us. But we see that we've been backing away from that. We see that the mafioso quafioso has attempted to go out and wholly redefine who we are. We mustn't accept that. We mustn't tolerate it. That should not become the new norm. But under the current trajectory, and the fact that he has been selected as the nominee for the Gutless Opposition Party, or GOP, that is exactly where we are. That is exactly what those who are pushing for a tyranny of false unity are hoping to achieve. Well, no. I'm not going to push for that. I'm not going to accept that. None of us should push or accept that. It goes wholly against who we are. But again, the true character, heritage, spirit, and above all, identity of the American people is that of being rugged individualists, that of being able to make determinations for ourselves, to think for ourselves, to be the freedom-loving, liberty-loving nation that we have always been. But how do we do that when neither one of the two candidates for the two mainstay political parties vying for the highest office in the land have any respect for the Constitution, have any respect for who we are, have any respect for what it is we're trying to accomplish? You can't do that. And going along with this line of thought that Trump has essentially redefined the American electoral process into bad entertainment. Look at what he did going out to Louisiana. Sure. They say that he's the only one that cared, that he's the only one that went out and did anything, blah, blah, blah. He's politicizing it, folks. He is politicizing the plight of those people. Instead of allowing the first responders and the networks that are already in place to do what they need to do, and if there is a lack of response on their part, then yes, that should be investigated. But it shouldn't be done in a political nature. It shouldn't be done in a political fashion. You see, that shows one of the things that my first officer, Jeremy Grapenton, and I have oft-times lamented on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. It's as though we have lost a sense of camaraderie in these United States of America, that we have become so disillusioned, so divorced from the original intent, purpose, and definition of this freedom-loving land that we no longer recognize that we are a vibrant community of popular sovereigns. We have been so exposed to divisiveness and the message of division and balkanization that are tried, true, albeit threadbare tactics and strategies utilized and implemented by the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists to our great detriment. And we see that it's played out in this 2016 election cycle. Remember that after Katrina first hit, that George Bush didn't just rush out to make a photo op out of it. And he did the right thing, but he was eviscerated for it. And now Trump is trying to use the same tactics and strategies that the Democrats used during the immediate aftermath of Katrina to score political brownie points. It's sickening. He was out there donning a campaign hat. He wasn't there out of interest for these people. He was there to make a photo op, to try and score political points. And that should make every decent, hard-working, red-blooded American citizen's stomach turn. Because when you stop and consider what it is that he's doing there, he is, once again, leading or lending credence and credibility to those who would attempt to continue that twisted, diabolical message and plan of Kat Sunstein of never letting a crisis go to waste. Well, that's not who we are. That's not what the United States of America is about. That's not what defines us as a nation and as a people. That's wholly unacceptable. That's wholly intolerable. That is a disgusting display of corruption. The very same sort of corruption that we loathe and despise on the part of the Fabian socialist-controlled Democrat Party. It's the same type of destructive chaos and anarchy that the Fabian socialists are hoping to utilize to utterly annihilate the United States of America, both as a nation and as a people. And it's just disgusting. It is an ugly display of the worst characteristics of what the modern American system of polity has evolved, or more appropriately, devolved into. Now, why? Why has this been allowed to come to fruition? Why is this now tolerated and accepted as some good thing? Yes, we give credit where credit's due. Trump did bring a semi-full, an 18-wheeler full of supply for these people. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. But did you have to connect the publicity stunt with it? Did you have to try and score political brownie points? Now, I know that a lot of people are going to sit there and say it doesn't matter as long as the help was there. Yes, but remember, the United States of America was and is always meant to be a virtuous republic. That is what our founding fathers expected us to be. Well, you're not virtuous when you're doing this for the purposes of vainglory. You're not virtuous when you're doing this to hold up a mirror to the American populace and say, looky, looky, looky at me, I'm doing this, not out of the goodness of my own heart, but to point a finger at Barack Hussein Obama and Hillary Rotten Clinton for ignoring this. Well, yeah, we can see that on our own. We can see that they have been ignoring the plight of the people of Louisiana after this historic flooding. We can see that that is a nasty thing, but we shouldn't be the ones who double down on the tactics and strategies that they've used of politicizing every crisis, of becoming this base, disgusting reflection of corruption. Again, this is a presidential election. It is not about cheap, poor entertainment. And again, it shows that Trump does not have any morality, does not have any core values. And that's played out in such a detrimental fashion here that it's sickening. But the Lion Branch Trumpidians don't care. They try and point to this and say, see how good and bigly his heart is? No, I'm sorry. I don't see it that way. And I have a feeling a vast majority of our cherished listening passengers and audience members won't see it that way either. J.D. Rucker, who owns the New Americana, has come out 2 days ago with a truly interesting article in which he said that conservatism is not republicanism. And it's important to note here that this kind of goes directly in line with what Donald J. Trump had said earlier during this campaign cycle, in which he said that it is the Republican Party, not the Conservative Party. And part of the problem that Rucker points to is that conservatism has not essentially been defined in any meaningful fashion by the Republican Party, that we have allowed various candidates who didn't necessarily agree with conservatism to shape and define what conservatism means. But if you think about just the root meaning of the word conservative, it means to conserve, to acquiesce to and adhere to the traditions and institutions and values and laws, and not simply to change for the sake of change alone. And that makes sense. That means that we adhere to the Constitution. Now, one of the things that we have discussed at depth or in depth here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, going all the way back to our premiere episode that aired on September 11th of 2015, is this notion of the dark and twisted game of semantics. We know that the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists and their lapdog allies in the rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media like to twist words away from their original definition and meaning. And you can see this with liberal. The classical definition of liberal was someone who wanted a small, decentralized, representative Republican form of government, one that followed the natural law tenets. In fact, it was our founding fathers that had gone about in truly defining that. Well, as the great visionary Zygmunt Dobbs pointed out in his magnus opus Keynes at Harvard, all the way back in the 1950s and 60s, that Fabians enjoy changing the meanings of words to bamboozle people, to basically lull the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people, into a false sense of security. And they do that by basically hiding their true intent behind fluff or puffery. And you know who's been a master at that throughout this 2016 presidential election cycle? It has been Donaldolf, Julius Caesar Trumpolini. He is the one that has gone forth and embraced these things without any consideration as to the deleterious and detrimental impact that it will have upon the societal fabric of these United States of America, and that it will have on the electoral process of the United States of America. These are just the harsh, stark facts of reality that we must face, because it's there. It's undeniably there. It is what he has been doing for so long. And we have to really come together and figure it out and basically put our foot down and say enough is enough. Because if we don't, they will continue to use these twisted games of semantic to redefine us, to push us ever further to the left. And that has been Trump's goal all along, because he doesn't care about conservatism. He's never once been a conservative. He just magically embraced them before the start of this election cycle, as if that would somehow change the course of things. And again, it's why he has become the Pied Piper of disillusioned conservatives. But it's all a bunch of bovine excrement. It all is out of step, out of tune, out of character with what we hold near and dear in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. And again, the Republican Party is partially to blame here. In fact, bears the majority of the brunt of blame, because they are the ones that have denied who we are, have gone against who we are, have ignored who we are, and for what? They've done it for what they want, because what they want is to essentially embrace the same type of power and corruption that the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists have pushed. They've seen this as a way to enrich themselves, because it's about themselves. It's not about us. It's me, and my clique of autocrats who have managed to embrace political power, to use political power as we see fit for the purposes that we have set out for ourselves. But when you really stop and think about that, it is so diametrically opposed to all that we hold near and dear in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. Sure, they'll try and sit there and claim that they're about standing up for conservative principles, like the principles that were put forth by Calvin Coolidge, but they really aren't. They really aren't. And J.D. Rucker, very interestingly, says that there are 4 categories of people within the Republican Party. The first is what he calls the establishment backers. And according to Rucker, that those are the party faithful who move their perspectives to align with the GOP of the moment. In other words, they define the conservatism du jour based upon the needs to perpetuate and increase their power. That's your detente wing of the gutless opposition party. Those are your people like Benedict Arnold, Paul Ryan, people like John Boehner, people like Mitch the Eternal McConnell. And in many instances, like with McConnell and with Boehner, they have very rapidly aligned themselves with the mafioso quafioso. If you recall, Boehner had gone out and essentially claimed that Texas Senator Ted Cruz was the devil incarnate, the devil in flesh. Now, does that sound like something that a rational person who really believes in constitutional compositionism believes or would advocate? No, of course not. That's a petty, jealous, orange-hued man. And that's what Boehner is. It's what he's always been. It's why he is a natural ally of the orange Cheeto Jeebus himself. It's because they probably visit the same tanning salon de Cheeto. But it does not reflect who we are. It does not reflect the values that we hold near and dear. And so we see that they themselves are in the midst of an identity crisis as the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty. We, the people of the United States of America, are disappointed with them, displeased with them, are not happy with the direction that their supposed leadership has been pushing this nation. It's because they have not stood up to this disastrous Barack Hussein Obama regime. They have basically collaborated with him. That's not what the base of their party wanted. That's not what their constituents put them there for, but that's what they believe. That's what they have done. That's what they've doubled down upon, and that's what J.D. Rucker was pointing to in this article that he put out 2 days ago, that of republicanism isn't conservatism. Then we see that the second category that he came forth with was the misled. At some point, according to Rucker, a good chunk of Republicans find themselves in this group for a time. We hear a politician who inspires us with visions of Reagan, Coolidge, and Lincoln, even though my first officer and my first air marshal and I have spoken in great deal about the unconstitutional tyranny of Lincoln. We've even done a program dedicated explicitly to that. But still, what Rucker's going on here was saying that then we see them in action, and they're more like Boehner, Dole, and McConnell. Again, this is the idea of thinking that the electorate's stupid. They do think that. Deep down, in their heart of hearts, they think we are stupid. They think that we have short attention spans, and that has been fanned by the soundbite style of campaign and media that's been put forth by the rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media. It's not that they encounter or truly believe in the tenets of a limited government as our founding fathers espoused and advocated, going back to the inception of this nation some 235 plus years ago. Nothing could be further from the truth. They are, once again, about amassing power for themselves illicitly at the great expense and cost of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours, we the people. So again, it comes down to this notion that we must be the masters of our own destiny, that we must be the ones that hold them accountable for their words, deeds, and actions, and from any departure from the party platform. But that's the thing. For election cycle after successive election cycle, the gutless opposition party, or GOP, has betrayed the principles that are the quintessential aspect of the party identity and conservatism. And since 2008, the party has been sliding ever further to the left without much impediment, without much resistance, while still paying lip service to conservative ideas. And look at the anemic state of the Freedom Caucus. And by the way, look at how many of them did finally submit to Trumperism or Trumpery. It shows that there is a type of calculation that occurs in the political powers that be, that they don't want to rock the boat. But as my first officer, Jeremy Grapenton, so oftentimes likes to repeat, we should capsize this boat. We should shake things up because, damn it, they're not listening to us. And they have not been listening to us for quite some time now. That's unacceptable. That is untenable. That is unsustainable. It should not be accepted. It should not be a part of who we are, either as a nation or as a people. And it shows just how departed and divorced the American system of polity has become from the true fundamental tenets contained in the clear and concise language within the four corners of our shared United States Constitution. Again, the only ones in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours who can save this nation, who are endowed by their creator, the God of nature, with the power, authority, and wherewithal to place the United States of America back onto the path to prosperity, is we the people. What we need from governmental leadership is a consistent point of view in which the leaders who are there to serve in a representative capacity of the popular sovereigns to unlock the chains and shackles of governmental tyranny, bondage, and ultimately servitude and oppression that have been hampering the American people, have been hindering our efforts to go about our duty, obligation, and above all, responsibility to place this nation back onto the path to prosperity. But that's not been the case with the gutless opposition party and its leadership. And that's why we find ourselves in what J.D. Rucker calls the misled. The third category of which he mentioned is the misguided. According to Rucker, to some extent, nearly all true conservatives find themselves in the realm of the misguided. He gives an example that they know that we need to cut spending, yet they're willing to support or at least accept compromise to spend a little more this time so we can fight harder next time. And most appropriately, he goes on to say that unfortunately next time always seems to be the same. And what he's speaking to here is something that Jeremy and I have oftentimes reiterated on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. That's that the powers that be are not going back to the Constitution. They're not looking to root their ideals within the clear and concise language of our shared United States Constitution. Again, this is them being me, I, and illicitly amassing powers and goodies unto themselves at the expense of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people. Again, this is not something that can be ignored. But you're not going to hear this kind of analysis from the rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media. You're not going to hear this from the detente wing of the gutless opposition party unless they think that they can carve out some niche or political advantage for it. But no, it is part of that thing that we have also referred to as the tyranny of false unity. Buying into this notion of, well, we have to elect the lesser of two evils, or as I like to put it, we have to choose the lesser of two weasels. But here's the problem. What we are essentially doing is placing these weasels that like to eat chickens in charge of the chicken coop. Now, if they are going to be in charge of security for the chicken coop, would it be surprising that they'd go against their own nature and not eat the chickens? That would be the surprise. And it's certainly not what they're doing. They're simply falling back onto their natural state, their natural way of being, and that is to go in and plunder the chicken house. That's what they do. That's what they've always done. And so we find ourselves in this untenable situation. We find ourselves as being, as J.D. Rucker put it, being misguided. Misguided in such a way as we are misguided in placing our faith in a political party that has abandoned its core principles, its core values, its identity. And of course, that in and of itself plays into the dark and twisted machinations of the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists who are hell-bent on utterly annihilating the United States of America both as a nation and as a people. Because ultimately what they want to do is to allow identity politics, allow balkanization to become the new norm, to pit American citizen against American citizens so that we are reaching out, attempting to tear out each other's jugulars and to bleed the lifeblood out of this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. Now, folks, I have no words of comfort or solace to convey as I sit here and speak into this microphone with regard to that. That is just one of those unavoidable, nasty truths that we have to realize has become a part of the American system of polity. But that does not mean that it's acceptable. It does not mean that it is something that we should accept or that should even be thought of as a new norm. Because the only way that it becomes a new norm is if we rest on our laurels and we allow that to become the case. Now, yes, the 2016 presidential election cycle has clearly demonstrated that disillusioned conservatives have turned their backs on conservatism. And as I have reiterated on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, it is our duty, obligation, and above all, responsibility to essentially rein them back, to hold them accountable for these decisions that they've made, irrespective of how wrong-minded or based in good intentions these decisions are. It's wrong to base it on the philosophy. That's the thing. We have essentially entered into an election cycle that is not just the post-truth campaign, and it's not just the election of betrayal. It's also the election of nothingness. There's no lofty, high-minded philosophy or principles on the side of so-called conservatives in this 2016 presidential election cycle. Trump certainly does not embrace the tenets of conservatism. That's why so many of us find him a wholly unacceptable candidate, irrespective of the fact that he is also just woefully inadequate when it comes to grounds for qualification to wield the reins of political power in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. That, too, is one of those inescapable truths, a self-evident truth, as our founding fathers would put it. But again, we can stand up to it, and we must stand up to it. Our founding fathers would have stood up to this as wholly unacceptable, wholly untenable, wholly unsustainable, and therefore not good for the nation as a whole. But you see, there it is again, the greater good for the American people that has been washed under, swept under the rug, forgotten about, not covered by the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media, not covered by the historical revisionists that have infiltrated our institutions of education from coast to coast and border to border. Again, it's an untenable, unacceptable scenario and situation that we find ourselves in, and we must overcome it. There is no choice on that. We do not have a choice with regard to that. And so, looking back at what J.D. Rucker was saying in his article, that brings us to this fourth category, the category of populace. According to Rucker, this is a broad category. It doesn't just encompass what we've seen driving the Donald Trump candidacy. He goes on to say that it's hard to tell the length of time this category has been wielding as much power as it does in this cycle. And the reason for that is that they're able to hide in the penumbras or shadows of the party. In other words, they're not seen until the right candidate rears his or her ugly head. In this case, for the 2016 presidential election cycle, that right candidate, the one that fits the sweet spot with populace, is Donald Julius Caesar Trumpolini, the New York billionaire, businessman, real estate tycoon, and all-around Bulgarian who sometimes goes by either John Barron or John Miller. He satiates them. He gives them a platform to build upon. And he says that one thing is certain. It's the result of a leftward lurch that the country has been experiencing since the counterculture movement of the 1960s. And he's right. He's right in saying that. It's because we have allowed the detente wing of the gutless opposition party to go about redefining things, to go about and essentially define the true nature and essence of conservatism, to define conservatism de jure. And that, of course, goes back to that first category that he spoke of being the establishment backers. Well, they're the ones who compose the detente wing of the gutless opposition party, or GOP, and it's important that I pause for a moment and explain again exactly what I mean by detente wing. This is why I don't call them the quote-unquote establishment. Detente means live and let live. It means to allow things to go as they are and only to mount token resistance. Think about the way that it was used under Richard Nixon with respect to the Soviet Union and China. It was mutually assured destruction. It wasn't as Reagan wanted to do it in his first term, which was to essentially bankrupt the empire of evil, to vanquish them in the arena of global politics and hegemony. No, they wanted to carve out things to just allow the status quo to go forward. And if you think about it, that's what John Boehner did. That's what Benedict Arnold Paul Ryan is doing. That's what Mitch the Turtle McConnell is doing. They don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to send out tidal waves of fury. And as a result of that, They've paid lip service to conservatism, but they've never once truly believed in it. They've never once truly adhered to it, and therefore the electorate feels betrayed. Each and every time we go to the ballot box, it seems that there are a plethora of candidates who say seemingly all the right things at the right time, but once they're in, just abandon that, ignore it, or go about in an attempt to acquiesce power for themselves, to rein power in for themselves, and to grow wealthy off of our hard sweat, blood, tears, and toil. And so, of course, that leads us into the sort of raging, raw, emotional anger, this outburst of rage that has become a hallmark of the 2016 presidential election cycle. But as we have oftentimes attempted to state on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, if you allow yourself to be cajoled or forced into this raw state of emotionalism, it leaves you highly susceptible to the twisted machinations of con artists, carnival barkers, and the unacceptable type of snake oil salesman that we see with Donald J. Trump. It is the way he is. It is who he is. And he's always been that way. It's not about us. It's not about caring about us or advocating our point of view. And so it goes again to this central question that J.D. Rucker was asking in that article that he published 2 days ago. It's about who we are and whether conservatism needs to be abandoned. It's not that conservatism needs to be abandoned. It's that we need to stand up more efficiently and effectively to what's happened, to these dark and twisted games of semantics. And that goes to what we've been saying since our premiere episode, that we can't let them continue to redefine the lexicon of the American people or the American system of polity. And it really is something that requires us to be proactive. And what I mean by that is we have to think of a term that they cannot pervert. We have to think of a term that they cannot allow their dark, twisted game of semantics to come to the epicenter or the forefront. And that is why we have designed the term constitutional compositionist. That is a term that is much more difficult to rewrite, to pervert. And what it goes to, truly, ultimately, is that you can't redefine the way the Constitution is composed if you are going by its original composition. Yes, that's a term that they once tried to define as constitutional originalism. The problem with that term is that far too many are trying to say that that means you can look outside the Constitution, that you can look to other sources beyond the clear and concise language contained within the four corners of that sacred document. Well, you can't. That's why it has to be constitutional compositionists. It goes along with the reasoning that is contained within the least used, utilized, and understood amendment to the Bill of Rights, or first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution, the Ninth Amendment, which says that you can't interpret the Constitution, that its interpretation has already been set in stone, for lack of a better term. And it is that the rights cannot be used to disparage other rights. Rights cannot be created. That these rights were not mandated by the government, but were handed down to each one of us in our capacity as the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, whether we are natural born or naturalized citizens, by our Creator, the God of nature. Now, of course, the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists don't believe that. They don't want to adhere to that. They don't want to acquiesce to that. They don't want to promote that. So how do we overcome that? By embracing the term constitutional compositionist, by looking outside just the arena of American politics itself to essentially bringing morality back to the culture in general. And that means that our work is cut out for us. It means that we have a lot to do still before we can truly overcome all of these hurdles, obstacles, and adversities that have been placed in our path. And that's not some easy thing to ignore, and it's not some easy thing to accomplish. As I've said before, it's far easier said than done. But we can do it by going back to basics, by spreading the knowledge of our shared United States Constitution and thereby our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. That's how our founding fathers would have done it, and that's what they would expect us to do. And therefore, we will do that. We will remain, true to that. We will stay on course, stay the course with respect to it, because we must. There is no choice. This is the last best hope and beacon for freedom on God's green earth. And we are the watchmen of that freedom. We are the ones that have been endowed by our Creator with the duty and obligation and above all responsibility, as every right and liberty is couched with such duties and obligations and responsibilities, to proactively maintain and safeguard those rights and our Republican form of government that is a limited form of government. Now, with that said, it is time for us to begin our descent. I'm going to go ahead and send the flight attendant back with one last round of alcohol. While she may be entertaining, it's not her purpose to transform the flight into a different type of entertainment than the enlightened entertainment that we provide. As always, folks, I'm Randy Wright, your captain, and I want to thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer. I also invite you to leave any questions, comments, or concerns you may have, either here on our YouTube page, our Google Plus page, or our Facebook page. And on top of that, I invite you to follow us at Twitter with the Twitter handle at Radio Aviation EX. One more time, folks, that's at Radio Aviation EX. And there you will find the departure board that lists my personal Twitter account, the personal Twitter account of my first officer, Jeremy Grapington, our Blogspot account, which I have updated today with a new audio blog on it. So go ahead and check that out, folks. And of course, the Cafe Press account, where we have all sorts of trinkets, goodies, attire, apparel with our traditional classical logo on it or our first-class passenger logo on it. And we also have tote bags, drinking glasses, shot glasses, watches, clocks, neckties, dog clothing even with those on it. And they're all at reasonable prices with such a wide array of goodies at reasonable prices. You should be able to find something that fits your needs. So go ahead and check that out and empower yourself and show that you are a truly enlightened soul for listening in to Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. Folks, we will see you next time. Do take care.